I believe we have everyone, so let's go ahead and get started. Hi, everyone. I'd like to welcome you to our, could one of my co-hosts please mute? All right, let's try this again. Welcome everyone to our webinar. We're going to be upgrading CentOS and CloudLinux 7 to 8 and then on to 9. But first, I'd like to thank our sponsors, AMD. Stay tuned to the end of the presentation for a special gift from AMD. And first of all, look, Katrina, take it away.
Hi, good morning, good afternoon, good evening. My name's Katrina Gundel. I head up AMD Solutions Architects team here in Eastern North America. And I'm very happy to be here today sponsoring this event with our good partners, CloudLinux, the AlmaLinux Foundation, and High Velocity, cPanel, and ESIS. We're going to have a great discussion on how to migrate from CentOS CloudLinux 7 to 8 using AlmaLinux on your AMD platforms. AMD's had explosive growth over the last few years with our EPYC and Ryzen products. And in fact, High Velocity, who's presenting here today, is seeing great success with their EPYC deployment. With our recent acquisitions of Xilinx and Pensando, we've really rounded out our offerings in the data center. So in addition to our EPYC CPU servers and our Instinct lines of GPUs for AI and ML, we now have Xilinx accelerators with things like the Alveo SmartNIC, which can be customized and optimized to address CSP-specific custom workload needs. Next slide, please. So all this growth comes from our laser focus on performance. You know, we're leading the market with incredible IO and core densities. We're able to pack 64 high-performance x86 cores and 8 DDR4 memory channels and 128 PCIe Gen 4 lanes all into 7 nanometer single socket solution. And you know, that's just with what we have launched and in production today. And I'm going to show you, we have a roadmap which is just around the corner where it's even more performance. So this gives us tremendous advantage in terms of performance per watt, enabling us to reduce power and cooling, real estate, administrative costs, bringing down greenhouse gases. And you know, that all drives down your total cost of ownership. We have fantastic tools to calculate all this. You can model the different scenarios and compare against the competition. You can find that on AMD.com, or you can Google AMD TCO tools and it will bring you right to the landing page. I'd highly encourage you to visit and take a look at it. It can show you things like, by moving from a dual socket server to one of our single socket solutions, you can take the equivalent of, you know, 50 cars off of the road in 1 year, for example, and reducing your greenhouse gases. And then next slide, please. So right now, you know, what's coming up? We already have Rome, Milan, and Milan X launched and in production today, leading the industry. And on the roadmap right around the corner, we have a number of products that are slated to be launched. They're exciting and are going to cover everything from general purpose compute to more specialized solutions like our telco targeted Sienna device. So this slide doesn't show Ryzen. However, it's really popular with dedicated bare metal hosters and certified by both CloudLinux and AlmaLinux. So this is great for workloads that don't require the full range of capabilities that EPYC offers, or if they're particularly cost sensitive. We've just released the AM5 generation with support for PCIe Gen 5 and DDR5. The folks over at Phoronix have done benchmarking on the Ryzen server platform. So I'd really encourage you to check that out. It's pretty awesome. I'm looking forward to hearing the rest of the webinar today and hearing more from our partners. And you know, if anybody has any questions for me, I'm happy to talk. And so please reach out. We have some great gifts at the end, so please stick around.
I'm sorry about that. I was giving a very thoughtful presentation on you. Let me start again. Like most of us, I've been using a enterprise software for quite some time, and the problem that keeps coming up every 3 or 4 or 5 years is end of life. And today we're going to be talking about Elevate. Elevate is a way of extending the life of your virtual or hardware systems by upgrading the operating system between version 7 to version 8, and of course on to version 9. We never really had a great way to do this in the CentOS days and in the Red Hat Enterprise Linux days as well. So hopefully this will be a better experience for everyone involved. So why Elevate? Elevate is brought to you by the AlmaLinux Foundation. It's a major way of getting between the core version 7 and version 8 operating systems, and it's based off of the Red Hat Enterprise Leap framework. It's done in collaboration with the Oracle Linux team, and it supports third-party repositories. So as long as these are available for version 7, it can be upgraded onto version 8. So who's the AlmaLinux Foundation? I keep talking about these folks. Well, the AlmaLinux Foundation is a nonprofit 501c6 charity. It's community first, and it's invested by a lot of the major players in the industry. And you'll probably recognize some of these great folks on the screen here. And we're going to actually get to hear a little bit more from several of them directly. So up next will be Mr. Eric Llewellyn.
Thanks, Eric. So I work for High Velocity Hosting as a system administrator, and we do bare metal hosting. We have locations all around the country as well as all around the world. And AlmaLinux is valuable to us because a lot of our customers, a rather large amount actually, use CentOS as their main deployment operating system. And as you know, CentOS is nearing end of life. And there have already been issues associated with its continued usage in production environments. So one of them is lack of support from hardware vendors or software vendors as CentOS 7, gets older and older. And CentOS has actually had issues. CentOS and its 3.x Linux kernel has had issues with newer AMD Ryzen 7 processors for dedicated gaming servers. And the only solution for some of those situations is to upgrade to a newer operating system with a newer Linux kernel, such as AlmaLinux 8. And another problem that you have with continuing to use an EOL operating system such as CentOS is once 2024, once you get to the date after 2024, the operating system will stop receiving critical stability and security updates. And if you have a whole fleet of servers and you have some type of vulnerability that isn't going to get patched, that could be disastrous for any production environment. Fortunately, though, AlmaLinux exists, and it's our preferred choice to recommend to customers as an alternative to CentOS. And there have already been a large amount of customers that have asked, hey, CentOS is dying, most of my stuff is rel-based, what should I move to? And we usually recommend AlmaLinux as it's friendly, and as stated before, it's binary compatible with CentOS. So the same programs such as cPanel or Direct Admin that you're using on CentOS previously will work on AlmaLinux just the same way. And the LTS dates for AlmaLinux are also very impressive, and I like this a lot. AlmaLinux 8, for example, LTS goes to 2029. AlmaLinux 9, for example, goes to 2032. So you can upgrade your servers and not have to worry about upgrading the distributions for almost a decade. That's pretty impressive. And I even use AlmaLinux for a lot of my personal servers, and it's my favorite Red Hat-based distribution because the community is very friendly. Whenever I have an issue, it's not too hard to find help, and the documentation is spectacular as well. And then, of course, another great feature is the Elevate tool, which Eric and other members of this webinar will expand on later. So overall, AlmaLinux is our preferred choice for replacing CentOS. We're happy to recommend it to our customers, and they are very pleased to have a familiar, stable, and friendly alternative to CentOS.
Thank you, Eric. All right, and up next will be Benny.
Hi, everybody. My name is Benny Vasquez. I am the chair of the board of the AlmaLinux Foundation. We are, like Eric said, and like Eric Ellis said, we are an independent nonprofit that is the owner of all of the intellectual property and all of the trademarks and all of the copyrights around the AlmaLinux OS. Our goal is to ensure that everyone that has a stake in the future of AlmaLinux has the ability to have a voice in the future of AlmaLinux. We don't want AlmaLinux to be a product that can be owned or sold or profited on in the way that we saw, that we have seen so many times in the Linux ecosystem. We are community owned and community operated with a community elected board as of a month ago, and that is a very exciting milestone for us. As he said, we have investments from key players across all industries, from AMD, obviously, and across the web hosting industry. If you're part of that, then you'll recognize a bunch of the names that were on that slide earlier. We have massive adoption across many, many industries as well, like obviously web hosting, but we've seen education and supercomputing, businesses everywhere picking us up for both testing and production use. We've seen investments both in hardware and in humans, like providing people who contribute to the project in a multitude of ways. And obviously we get support in forms of cash as well, because nothing is free, right? We're used by industries that historically and even today cannot compromise on speed, stability, or cost. And so that's the void that we're hoping to fill. If you go to the next slide, there are a bunch of things that we're working on right now. Obviously, our guiding star is continuing to build the leading RHEL clone. We are a one-to-one binary compatible, like Red Hat releases the code and rebrand it and rebuild it. We're not trying to do anything crazy. We are filling a void that was left when Red Hat, or when IBM decided to discontinue the downstream version of RHEL, right? What's the next one? Obviously, solving unique and interesting problems for everyone. When you join the AlmaLinux community, the thing that you'll notice immediately is that somebody comes in with a problem and another member of the community solves it. It is not, we're not doing anything. There's no corporate driver for it. It is everybody has a need, and then we work to solve that need together. And then obviously the help that we've gotten from CloudLinux has provided a deep technical knowledge in how to build a platform like this, and because they've been doing it for a decade or more. But one of the things that we're really excited about is open sourcing our entire build platform. We just released that, I think last month, or maybe earlier this month. And it's out there for everybody to use and see. And it's super exciting. If you're looking to get involved, on the next slide, you'll see a ton of all of the traditional touch points that you might want to use. We've got everything from the AlmaLinux chat, which is hosted by Mattermost, one of our sponsors, to all of the traditional like Reddit and Twitter and all of that kind of stuff. You can also join the AlmaLinux Foundation as a member. Like I said, anybody that has a stake in the future should have the ability to have a say in what we do. If you want to support us a little bit more deeply, on the next slide, you'll see as an individual, there are 3 ways you can back us. Apparently, we're going to start with the third one, obviously, join the foundation. Or if you want to back us in a monetary way, you can do that through either Open Collective, which is a great open source platform that you can use to back up a ton of open source and nonprofit groups. And then GitHub sponsors, obviously, we're there too. As a company, there are obviously ways to sponsor us. You can, on the next slide, you'll see there are a bunch of benefits that you get as a company if you want to back us with a little bit more money. And you can nominate folks for the board to vote on things that happen as part of the OS Foundation. The thing you'll see is that the people who are on our board are people who really are invested in the future of AlmaLinux, whether or not they're from a corporate sponsor. And that's one of the things that I'm most excited to get to work with, are the people that care about what's going on, whether or not they're from a company that has invested. If you want to find more details about that, you'll see on our, if you go to the next, yeah, and then there's one, there you go. There's some links that you can go to find some details about what that looks like from a corporate sponsorship perspective. And I think that's it for me. Are we back to Eric, or are we going straight to Jesse?
Yes, Jesse's up next.
All right.
Cool. Thank you
Benny.
very much, Benny and Eric.
Yeah.
My name is Jesse Asplin. I'm the Chief Experience Officer of WebPros, having spent the last 15 or 16 years on the cPanel side of the business. I'm also a board member of AlmaLinux, huge fan and contributor to the open source platform. And I'm going to be going over essentially some of the cool things that WebPros and more specifically cPanel has been working on top of AlmaLinux to support, not only the operating system, but also some other cool features, what I'm about to dive into in terms of upgrading your older operating systems to a new modern one. Next slide. So one of the first things I want to address is, why move to AlmaLinux as a cPanel user, and I think one of the biggest benefits that I've been a huge fan of since day one, even in development, is the fact that there's going to be tools to actually upgrade in place over the more traditional approach, which is to wipe and re-import all of the backups, or set up some new hardware to actually migrate that stuff over to that new hardware. And a lot of companies struggle with deciding which methods to choose, and generally they're all time intensive or cost intensive when it comes to making those decisions. So you have to not only consider the cost and time involved, but copying over configurations, making sure all of your customers' websites are online, things like that are a big uphill battle when it comes to upgrading your system to a more modern OS. And what typically happens, and it's very common in the hosting industry, is a lot of hosting companies will wait till the last minute for when the end of life or LTS tier of something is about to come up, and then they kind of scramble or even go over the LTS time period and pay extra money to receive LTS-based support beyond the life of the operating system. And the Elevate tool itself is actually a perfect way to overcome that. Next slide. So what I'm going to show you in the next couple of slides is some of the cool things that a team called Busy Camels within the cPanel team, big kudos to them, have built on top of the Elevate tool, is actually support for Elevate on cPanel specifically. So you can see here that the screenshot that I took here is a system that started out on the traditional CentOS 7 distribution running cPanel. This is a WHM interface today. And over the next couple of slides, I'm going to show you what the tool actually looks like, how it progresses, and how seamless it is. But first, I want to outline, no matter what, when you make a major OS change, either moving between systems, re-imaging, or using the Elevate tool, we always encourage backups no matter what. Things can go wrong whenever you do anything major. So taking backups is, of course, best practice in any kind of scenario. And it gets it even easier if you're using VMs or VPSs that allow you to take snapshots of the entire VM so you can get it back online should any issues occur. Next slide. So the first part of the cPanel Elevate script, which is also built on top of the standard Elevate tooling you've seen from AlmaLinux, is that it'll run through some additional checks on top of what Elevate looks for when it comes to making sure the system's prepared to actually upgrade to the AlmaLinux 8. And it'll do some basic checks for the traditional easy Apache configurations, as well as system packages. Make sure you don't have any foreign repos that could be problematic on AlmaLinux 8. And it'll do some basic checks and dump out stuff to you if there is any issues, so you know how to go and fix them. But generally, you can see here, this specific instance was a vanilla install of cPanel, so there was no issues presented as a result of that. And it's letting you know that you can continue to move on to step 1 of the tool, which is running the Elevate tool. Next slide. So some of this is, as I said before, is a mix between AlmaLinux's default Elevate, as well as some things we added on top to consider for packages that cPanel installs. But in the first stage of this script that you run on the system on CLI is it's actually installing the Elevate cPanel service that handles most of the additional steps that are going to come after this, which I'll explain in the next slides. Move to the next slide. So the first stage, or I should say it's the first real stage of this Elevate tool, which is stage 2, is actually going to be doing some of the actual preliminary stuff of checking yum repos. It's going to be disabling certain services that we know aren't going to be compatible on EL8. So this will be the first area where you might see some services or alerts coming from your standard monitoring coming to you when it first begins. Next slide. So stage 3 is actually the meat of most of the script. This is actually using the Leap tool that Eric mentioned earlier that we're deriving a lot of the Elevate processes off of. And this actually goes through a myriad of checks and balances when it comes to making sure the system and RPMs and everything else is prepared for being upgraded to AlmaLinux 8. And this is generally where you may run into warnings or various output that tells you, you should go check to make sure that these RPMs have a replacement once it upgrades. It won't handle it very well. This is the part where you want to bail if there's issues that that can't be overcome on AlmaLinux 8. Next slide. So once it goes through all of the checks and balances that it has in stage 3, stage 4 is basically going into its reboot stage. So when it does the reboot stage, it's actually doing the distribution upgrade up into AlmaLinux. So once the system actually completes, which can take generally around 10 to 15 minutes, it'll actually be on AlmaLinux 8 once it completes, as long as everything went through well. Obviously, any type of reboot can always be scary for a system administrator, but from what we've seen in testing and things like this, this has actually worked pretty well. Next slide. So you can see once the system rebooted, and you'll notice that I didn't show step 5, but step 5 was essentially the completion message of the conversion of the CentOS 7 into AlmaLinux 8. But the screenshot I'm showing you here is showcasing that same system I showed you on the original slide, that it's now on the AlmaLinux 8 version. And it took approximately 30 minutes to complete the upgrade process end to end for like a standard vanilla install of CentOS and cPanel. We've also seen in some production use cases, such as a hosting company we acquired for testing, which I would say is a more modern setup of what a lot of hosting companies use with additional extensions, accounts on it, things like that. We've seen roughly about an hour is the average for anything for the entire end-to-end process to be completed. That doesn't mean downtime for the customers during this time frame. This is just the end-to-end experience you'll have as you're processing through a lot of these tools. The cool thing is, though, is the script handles everything for you. So there's no stepping through things unless there's issues. It kind of handles the entire process end to end, including the reboots, and you just confirm that you want it to happen. Next slide. So to kind of recap everything, cPanel Elevate is go back one. Yeah, cPanel Elevate is actually on GitHub. We have it fully open source as well. We accept pull requests, bugs, things like this as they come up. We know every environment can be different. And I think if, in the same regard as, even the Elevate tool itself, you know, we're accepting the same level of input as it comes to this. We also wrote up a white paper as a result of the production hosting company we use for testing this that kind of outlines the entire process we had end to end to showcase what you might experience if you use this in a production environment. And that is all for me.
Thanks, Jesse. Up next is Andrew, who's going to show you a little bit more about Elevate.
Yes, thanks. I will provide you some technical details about Elevate, configuration of Elevate, and how to extend Elevate to support third-party vendors. Next slide, please. To upgrade core operating system without any third-party repositories, you need several configuration files. First of all, it's device driver deprecation data.json file. It contains information about unsupported hardware. So when you are trying to upgrade to the next major version and it doesn't support your hardware, you will be noticed about it. Lib upgrade repositories repo is file that contain repositories of your target OS you are going to migrate to, like AlmaLinux CentOS or something like that. pes-events file will have dedicated slide for this. Repo map file contain mapping between repo names in source operating system and target operating system. Unsupported driver names and unsupported PCIDs that also files about hardware that is unsupported on target operating systems, like a bit deprecated files, I think, but we still provide them, and RHEL also provides them for migration. Next slide. Yes, thank you. pes-events file, why we need this? Actually, you can't update between major versions of RHEL using just DNF upgrade. It's not possible. So you need some more information about what happened to your packages during this migration. So we have some idea that every package between source and target operating system can be several states. So it can be present. Good to know. We don't do anything here. This package will be just upgraded. Package can be removed by compatible. It's not available, for example, in AlmaLinux 8, so it will be removed. It can be deprecated. Again, this information just warning. I will not do anything. Package can be replaced. For example, Shotwell is replaced with GNOME Photos, not very obvious, you know, upgrade, but it will be replaced. Package can be split. Mostly it's about Python packages because in CentOS 7 we only had Python 2, and now we had Python 2 and Python 3. So almost every Python module was split to packages. The opposite way, every package can be merged. So strace and strace 32 was merged just to strace, for example. Package can be moved to another repo. Okay, and it can be renamed. Again, it's mostly about Python, but if, for example, you don't have Python 3 version, then you have such transition from Python to Python 2. This data is it's a bit huge, but Android Head provides this data for migrations between RHEL major versions, but unfortunately, this data is under license and we can just use it. So as a RHEL customer, you can download it, but as a Elevate project, we can give you this data. So we needed our own solution. Next slide, please. Yeah, and we created package evaluation service that contain all this data. It's a web service. All this data is freely available under Apache license. Everyone can contribute to this data, so you can provide your cases where your package somehow changed during migration. Initial data was provided by Oracle. Many thanks for them. to them for this, because I don't think it was possible to do such project without this support. And now with this data, yes, we have a lot of successful migrations between CentOS 7 to AlmaLinux or CentOS or whatever. Next slide, please. What about extending Elevate? Originally, Elevate doesn't support third-party repos, and rel lib also doesn't support this. So we were patched lib to support additional repositories like Apple or Nginx or something like that. So to support additional repositories, you have to provide 4 files. First of all, it's repo again files. So you should need to provide repositories for packages. You have to provide package evolution data for your repo. Most likely you probably, or most likely, I don't know, the package names in CentOS 7, for example, and CentOS 8 are the same, like Nginx, for example. So if in this way, you don't need to provide this data. This data only provided when you have changes. Map file, again, it's for mapping between your previous repo and next repo. And files with signature fingerprints, because without this file, installed packages will be ignored by lib. And these files should be placed to etc. lib files vendors d, and then your extra repositories will be supported. Right now, I'd like to share my screen to show actual data. Eric, can you give me this ability? Okay. So here are GitHub project with data. So we support migrations to AlmaLinux, CentOS, CloudLinux, EuroLinux, Oracle Linux, and Rocky. So almost enterprise Linux compatible distribution you can know. If you can see your favorite distribution here, you can contribute. So here is data for AlmaLinux, for example. Right now, we don't provide any deprecation data. It will be added later. So right now, you can have warnings about unsupported hardware. Sorry for that. Lib upgrade repositories. It's just repos for AlmaLinux, just repo file that can should seem familiar for you. But yes, sales file is really huge. When we are talking about migrations from 7 to 8, it's about 2,000 of actions. So it's really huge. A repo map in old format, that is comma separated values. It's not used anymore, but we provided it for compatibility reasons. Repo map JSON, it's new format for repo mapping. So base repo from CentOS 7 now maps to every repo from AlmaLinux, and the same for updates repositories. Extras is actually access. So nothing interesting here. And again, unsupported hardware is empty at the moment. For third-party repositories, we have data that was contributed by CloudLinux to support Immunify and kernel care products. So the same situation here. Mapping, repos, mapping in new format. Package evolution data is empty because package name hasn't changed. So, and again, the same situation for kernel care. And later we will support additional repos here with Nginx and whatever. And I will show you package evolution service, where we can see the actions like removed, for example. So you can see that browser is removed. It's not available, or we can see replaced Shotwell with GNOME photos and so on. And later you can just dump this data to JSON and use in your configuration if you need. Basically, you don't need anything with these core files. They are provided by Elevate project, but probably you're interested in vendors D files to provide additional repositories. That's it from my side, I think. Thank you. Oh, sorry for that. Due to limited time, we can't show you the whole process. So I invite you to look at a webinar I had recently about migration. It shows the whole process of migration, every technical details, and so on.
Andre, so are we going to support AlmaLinux 9 upgrades?
Yeah, sure, we're going. We're working on this right now, so I think probably in 1 month we have support for this.
So would it be possible to go from 7 to 8 to 9?
Yes, definitely.
Wow, that's exciting. All right, so we'll have full Apple support, and that means all those great tools that are optional but just fundamental to running a Linux system will be available, and then Plesk support in the near future. And we're working with third-party vendors because I mean that's what makes everybody's services and offerings just great. So now it's time for Q&A. Please, everyone, the chat is fun and exciting, but the things move a little too quick in the chat. So could we ask the questions in the Q&A section, please, and thank you. There is one question I see in here from John Reed. Will CloudLinux 9 to upgrade it to anytime soon? John, I don't think we have a CloudLinux 9 yet, but we will soon. All right, so I have a question. When will CentOS 7 to AlmaLinux 8 upgrade with cPanel be production ready? Jesse, would you like that one?
Can you repeat that? I'm sorry.
When will the CentOS 7 to AlmaLinux 8 upgrade with cPanel be production ready?
Yeah, so I mean, I think at this point, we think the actual check tool itself is pretty production ready. The biggest piece we're missing is actually some additional production testing. We've reached out to some partners and have some partners planned to start leveraging these tools. But at this point, we believe that the actual tool itself is ready enough to begin collecting more feedback on special use cases to continue to improve it. So, I mean, like I said earlier in my slides, always advocate for taking backups and things like that ahead of time. Maybe try it out on a server with less users and things like that. But for the most part, all the instances we've tested as much as we can have worked actually pretty seamlessly.
Awesome, thank you, Jesse. The next question we have is, can you elevate from CentOS 6 extended support?
I'm afraid not, because lib from RHEL originally allows only migrations starting with 7 version. So probably we can investigate it in the future, but at the moment it's definitely not possible.
Thank you, Andrew. All right, we have another question. Have you tested with Lightspeed integration in cPanel or third-party also?
I can answer that. So yes, so one of the Cytosity servers that I referenced earlier was using Lightspeed. We've also tested with like Nginx and stuff as well, at least the proxy version of Nginx. So from our testing so far, we haven't seen any issues with this.
Thanks, Jesse. Let's see here. I had a duplicate question. So any input from Jet Backup on when they will be ready to support? Well, I will personally reach out to Jet Backup. I have a great relationship with those folks, and make sure that they're ready for Elevate. And to be honest, to help in case something goes wrong. All right. Our this one's here is our CloudLinux 7 to 8 for cPanel supported, and are the big upgrade blockers for cPanel MySQL 5 to 8, for example. So I can answer the CloudLinux portion. Well, of course they are. This is something exciting that we want to have happen. The same RAM and CPU will just be faster in version 8 just because of the better kernel and all the other features there. Jesse, can you answer the MySQL question?
Yeah, so the check tool that I mentioned earlier in a slide actually does check the MySQL stuff, and it'll require you to get to a modern version, the latest version of MySQL that is supported on 7 before it'll allow you to upgrade, but there is an upgrade path as long as you get to that. So you will have to do some preparation if you're using legacy versions of MySQL, but it does support it.
Thanks, Jesse.
Yeah.
See here, are there any issues with upgrading a server running CloudLinux 7.9 plus Lightspeed and WHM, which of course is in cPanel? This is actually the target we're looking for, Mark. These are the servers that we're looking to update, and that should be quite viable here in the near future. The next one I see here is I don't see an answer for files like we do with Leap upgrades. Does cPanel not require an answer file, or does it create its own answer files?
I'll have to get back on that specific question. I'm familiar with the answer files, but I'm not sure specifically what our development team utilized for this. So I can definitely take that as a follow-up for Oscar to follow up on. I don't know if we're tracking a way to reach out to these guys, but I'd be happy to do so if we have it.
Okay, yeah, I can definitely take that. We'll get that
Okay.
after this. I have one anonymous question. Can we do it live in production before it's ready? I mean, you always can try. YOLO upgrades are great. I would highly recommend you take a backup or a snapshot. As Jesse mentioned, those VM snapshots are just the quickest way when things go wrong to get back up and running in a hurry. This one again, are you closely working on Elevate with cPanel, considering that many providers using cPanel are on CentOS and CloudLinux?
Yeah, I mean, so our development teams have actually been closely in touch with the AlmaLinux / CloudLinux developers working on the Elevate tooling, and I would say that there is actually heavy collaboration on this effort.
Awesome. I see this is a good question here. Will Elevate work in a container environment where the kernel is shared in the hypervisor, such as OpenVZ or Virtuoso? Very common.
I will answer this. Elevate migration requires you to reboot. So unfortunately, if we are talking about containers like Docker or Virtuoso and something like that without own kernel, I don't think it's possible.
Awesome, thank you. See, I think we already got your question here, Rodrigo, about CloudLinux upgrading, so I'm going to skip over that one.
Sure, you can upgrade to CloudLinux too. So you can upgrade from CentOS to CloudLinux, or between CloudLinux versions, it's supported. At the moment, we're still working on some CloudLinux specific features like CloudLinux network support and so on, but we'll definitely migration from CloudLinux 7 to CloudLinux 8 and next to 9.
Okay, I have this one from Carlos. Alma initially had problems with bare metal servers on OVH because of Cloud Init boot. Have you tried this type of migration with specific providers such as OVH, or providers with known issues such as AWS, Azure, and etc.?
Yeah, sure. We did a lot of testing with providers. I'm not sure about OVH, but Amazon and Azure for sure.
And I'm working with OVH to try and make our images a little bit easier for them to work with right now. So if there's any problems, we'll be able to help them out. This one's from Don. Can Elevate work from going from CloudLinux 7's hybrid kernel?
Nice.
I mean, I believe it would too. I mean, it's going to be a different. You won't really need the hybrid kernel after you upgrade, but you'll be able to start there and end in full-fledged version 8. All right, let's answer that one. Let's see. Oh my goodness, you folks keep asking questions. I see that PostgreSQL is a blocker. Is there any hope of that will be fixed?
Let's see. We're working closely with upstream guys with all the blockers. For example, Postgre is not the one blocker for you can't migrate EPA server if you has it, but it mostly we should work with upstream on this.
Awesome, thank you. Let's see here. You stated Acronis a third-party support. Is this a blocker at the time until it's integrated? So third parties like this, you would need to have a map to where they would go to. As long as the version, there's a version 8 supported RPM and repository, you would be able to just map to that newer version. If they integrate, it will work automatically at the time of elevation. Boy, that's going to be fun to say in the next couple of months. This one's in. What version of MySQL is considered legacy as a blocking upgrade?
I believe we have it so that actually I'll have to get back on the specific legacy versions. That's a follow-up question I'll have to take. I'm actually not familiar with which ones we're specifically blocking on.
All right, we'll get back to you, Eric. Easy name for me to remember. This one's good. What's the best place to get updates on the project?
As usual, you can check our blog. You can check our GitHub resources. I think the best way to know first about this.
Awesome, thank you, Andrew. Ryan, I know you had questions about MariaDB, but it's going to be very similar to what we had with MySQL. So we'll get back to you as well with Eric and get you an answer to that question.
I actually got a quick answer from the team as we've been here because they're in here, but
nice.
For the MySQL stuff specifically, we do require being on version 8, and you can upgrade to version 8 on CentOS 7 with cPanel. So you'll have to actually perform that upgrade before you do the Elevate script.
Well, then let's try this. What about the MySQL database version requirements?
That's what I mean, MySQL. Yeah. You mean MariaDB?
Yes, MariaDB. I'm sorry. They're interchangeable in my brain.
Let's see if I get an answer on that one as well in the next few minutes. Go ahead and move to the next one.
Awesome. Thanks, Jesse, and yep. Todd, and everyone else there behind the scenes. Let's see. Does the AlmaLinux Leap show on GitHub work on servers that are just CentOS 7 without cPanel installed? Good question, Reginald. I'll take that one. So yes, Andrew actually showed an example where it was updating GNOME and several different packages like that. So without a control panel, is definitely going to still be able to upgrade. And so those stranded CentOS 7 servers can have a future home. Oh my goodness, so many questions. If I work with Docker on CentOS 7, can I upgrade without a problem?
Sure. So probably you'll need to also add the Docker repository as third party to configuration and then try to upgrade.
Wonderful. Let's see here. I can answer the one here. All right. Are you setting up advantages or setting up clean new server? Are there any advantages of setting up clean new servers and migrating customer data using the cPanel transfer tool? I mean, there's always going to be advantages of deploying a fresh system. There's not going to be any cruft there from a system that's been online for a long time. But the disadvantage is, you know, all those sites are pointing at that IP address. And so the only way to really, you know, do the migration and kind of wax on, wax off between the two VMs using that IP address, you're still going to have some downtime. And I really believe that the downtime you're going to have with Elevate is going to be less.
Yeah, that, and I think, you know, there's a lot more you have to consider besides just the accounts themselves. It's the actual, you know, server configuration, things even outside of cPanel you need to consider that could have an impact on the transfer process and how sites work on the new system. And replicating that, especially if you're not using like something like Puppet or something like that to build out these new systems, it can be problematic and things can be forgotten. Whereas if you did an in-place upgrade, you keep all of those same settings. And as Eric mentioned, you know, the downtime factor is really the key crutch here when it comes to choosing between the two and the effort involved.
Any luck with those MariaDB requirements?
I'm still waiting. Yeah.
No worries, no worries. Just we just have a few questions left. So if you have any more questions to be asked, please queue them up now. Looking at your GitHub IO Elevate refers to that known blocking is using variants like CloudLinux. Is CloudLinux 7 to CloudLinux 8 possible with Elevate? Yes, absolutely.
So actually, I think he was referencing the cPanel Elevate GitHub. So
I'm sorry.
Today, the Elevate tool that we built wasn't tested against the CloudLinux setup. So while it may work, it's not a tested setup that we have in the Elevate tool, but it is something we are going to look into supporting.
This one's in from Fernando. Can we use the check tool to see if our servers are ready for potential problems? If so, where can we get that?
Actually, during migration, you will always start lib pre-upgrade command, and it just will not let you upgrade if something is wrong. So you will have a report about your system, and you check if something is wrong with it.
Awesome, thank you. When doing a live update, how much downtime or possible downtime would we want to schedule with clients? Or would this be mostly in the background and transparent aside from the reboots?
Before reboot, the process is not interrupting, so you can prepare for reboot during while your system is online. But then you will need to reboot. The reboots at least. One reboot will upgrade your system, and the second reboot will relabel all the CLinux stuff. So probably your downtime will be about 10 minutes.
Oh, wow, that's very fast. All right. Let's see here. Florin, you asked your question not be asked live, so I'm going to skip it and I'll get back to you after this. I think that's all the questions we have so far. If anyone else going once, going twice? Well, thank you all for coming to our event. I want to also thank our sponsors. And of course, AMD for sponsoring this webinar. You folks have been great. I really appreciate the activity and interactivity. Just fun to work with everyone in the market here again. So we'll see you at our next webinar and have something fun and exciting to show off. Have a great day, everyone.
Thank you.
Thanks.